Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and today we're talking about the future of wellness coaching. This is a huge space. There are many aspects of it that are being disrupted through technology and AI, and so I'm pleased to have Neal Sundberg with us to share his expertise in this space. Neal, over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. And as you said, my name is Neal Sundberg. I am the owner at Neal Sundberg Coaching and Consulting, LLC. Prior to that, I was the Senior Director of Coaching over at Headspace, as well as Ginger, which merged in 2021. Prior to that, I was a practicing therapist as well as coach in a variety of different mental health settings. From substance use to supportive housing, as well as medical clinics. And so now I have this really incredible opportunity as we're seeing just such a need across the board for integrating coaches into different healthcare settings, which really is where my expertise lies. And so I was really excited to talk through today to discuss all of what we're seeing in this incredibly quickly growing space.
Awesome. So let's get into the first question here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on recent evolutions in this space. So wellness and mental health coaching, I know that there are companies that are dedicated to this specifically, and then there are companies that are trying to bring this aspect into their organization. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think evolution is a good word because, like I said, it is very quickly growing. I'm seeing that a lot with my consulting work. And I think the reason behind that is a few things. One, I think there is a level of credibility and as well as standardization that is being created specifically with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. So like prior to that and prior to growing that, there was just kind of like the wild, wild west. Everyone was kind of calling themselves a coach. It was a term very loosely associated. And so this has created some standardization. It's created just a level of credibility that I think is really needed prior to the growth of any one kind of discipline. So I think that's one side of it. I think on the company side, companies are really starting to see like there is a clear ROI here. And I think the way that I like to explain it is if you go to a doctor's visit, you go to a specialist visit, and they're going to tell you, hey, you need to get more sleep. You need to eat healthier. You need to incorporate some stress reduction techniques. And that's great. And truth is, you probably knew a little bit about that anyway going in. Good advice nonetheless. But what's difficult is you leave those offices and how do you support kind of making those changes? And so health and wellness coaches, like if there are experts in anything, it is in behavior change specifically in that space. And so I think there's just a huge opportunity for coaches to really provide that continuum of care. The ROI for companies, is that they're able to get better sooner. They're able to reduce the amount of cost because people aren't having more office visits, urgent care, like all of those things. Yeah. So really exciting to see that people are starting to see that ROI that exists.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love that you mentioned the what happens after the session or the program or the visit, right? Because that's a big part of what we focus on at Virtual Sapiens too, right? As you know, it's the technology can really come in and help with the rewiring, like the consistent feedback, the consistent opportunities, making it more convenient for individuals to connect with coaches.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And so true. Like that's often the thing that is said, right? Is whether you're a therapist, a coach, is you have this short window of time, you're meeting with them. That is much longer than a doctor's visit, but let's say 45 to an hour or 30 minutes even. And then you have the rest of your week. And there's so much that happens in between that time. And to be able to like offer things, like you said, through Virtual Sapiens is a great example.
Yeah. Awesome. It's so fascinating. And so in keeping with this theme, like which Which disruptive technologies are you seeing that you think will be the most positive and the most lasting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the technologies that I think will kind of rise to the top aren't the technologies that are trying to kind of like take over a human coach's job. I think it's the ones that are really trying to up level, to really support a coach's work so that they can really practice, I think, at the height of their license, which I think is so important. Shameless plug for Virtual Sapiens is kind of my own experience. I know that I'm getting a little bit back into coaching. And one of the things, anytime you're getting back into something, there's some nerves there. It's like, do I still have it in me? Do I still have kind of what it takes? Do I still have that there? And so I was able to utilize the platform. I was able to practice, do some mock sessions, and have that. And it just got me to this level of comfort to where I'm like, oh, I can do this. I still have those skills, like they haven't left me. But it was also really provided just that safe space to engage in that exercise. And I think like when you're early on in your career as a therapist or early on as a coach, you get that level of supervision from a human even. But then as you continue in your career, that type of supervision, that type of feedback that you once received is like no longer there. So I think programs like yours through Virtual Sapiens offers a really great option for that continuum of getting feedback. I think other technologies that arise are like the ones that like AI note taking that kind of get away from that burden of the administrative tasks that take a long time. I know that folks don't love that. And again, what we were saying in the first question is that time in between sessions. Like, how can we make the most use out of it? Can we use biometric data in between that sessions and synthesize it to a coach or a therapist to make more use or better use of their time so that they can be more efficient in that small window of time that they have? So I think all of those things are super exciting. And I think the ones that all hopefully rise to the top.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting to consider some of those. It's like the intersection, right, between these technologies and the coaches, these certified coaches who are, doing that nuanced level of work.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few bodies of or institutions who train and accreditate, I don't know if that's the right word, but give coaching credentials. What are the ones that you think are like the most reputable?
Yeah, I mean, I think the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, I mean, I think that's the one that is definitely they've done an excellent job with creating like CPT codes. So like trying to get insurances to reimburse this type of work, which I think is such a large part of the direction that we likely need to go in. There are other organizations I know. There are ones that are more specific to certain work. I know there is one that focuses on ADHD and things of that nature. But I think a lot of even those that are more of the offsets will probably in some ways like fall under potentially the MBHWC. And so like we'll start seeing, I think, programs that are accredited by the MBHWC, but have these very specific like focuses, whether that's mental health, like the program at Headspace, or whether that is ADHD, or whether that is working with chronic care patients, things like that. So I think we'll see a lot more kind of sprouting out in that way.
Okay. And then this is a question I like frequently have with coaching in general, like for mental health and wellness, or just health and wellness coaching, like where do you see the line between, health and wellness coaching and therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question and one that I feel is asked. And I think it's one that needs to continue to be asked because we need to get that. And especially one interesting thing that I'm seeing is there are a lot of therapists who are actually now moving into this health and wellness coaching space as well, offering therapy, but also offering coaching as well. And so being able to differentiate that, so important. So I'm glad you asked. I think the way I like to kind of differentiate those things. And there are absolutely overlap. The thing that obviously coaching isn't is we're not giving diagnoses, we're not performing any type of clinical care.
Mm-hmm.
The focus of a coach is, again, that behavior change. And so
Mm-hmm.
coaches really focus, their kind of foundational education is motivational interviewing, it's the trans theoretical models of change, it's all of that, as well as certain types of health and wellness topics too. So that's really like the foundation of it, which the practice of it then lends itself to really, okay, what are you experiencing right now? Where do you want to get to? And me as the coach, like I'm going to help you with making those changes. We're going to develop SMART goals. We're going to talk through what is getting in the way of making those changes. And so it's very much more forward focused, I think, than therapy.
Right. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's a really interesting way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm like always,
Yeah.
because I would consider myself a facilitator, right? I facilitate for programs. I wouldn't say that I'm a coach really. And then obviously like, it's just even in some of the sessions that I've had, because what you were talking about communication, and people have some very, somatic ties to the way they show up and communicate, especially non-verbally. And so it's just really interesting sometimes when you're like, okay, and now we're getting into a space where you should consider working through that with a therapist, because like, I can't do that with you.
Totally. Yeah. And that's such a good call out too. Like the escalation of care is so important. Like we need to make sure we're practicing within our scope. And I think anytime there is a question about that, being able to address it directly with the person that you are coaching is so important.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. I'm glad we covered that.
Yeah.
So moving more now to the organizations and companies who are trying to instill a culture of coaching. How do you think these companies should embrace some of these changes while also putting plans in place to mitigate any concerns? And that could be concerns around technology and AI. It could be concerns around some of the stuff we just discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, what comes to mind here for me is you need to have the right people in the room. So like if you are thinking about developing a coaching program, I think you have to be careful that we're not like, coaches are not a catch-all for kind of a lower cost just offering. They're also not like customer service reps. And we have to be we have to hold to that integrity. And so in order to do that, like having coaches in those rooms, making those decisions, offering consulting services or whatever else is so important. We saw this, I think, a lot with digital health and even with like therapists. Like if it is a clinical, something that is clinical, like having people in the room who are therapists is so important. One of the things that I love to see at Headspace and what they were doing and still do is they have their own MBHWC program or accredited program. And there was so many like product folks and client success sales folks that were going through that program. And so they were now understanding, okay, I have a really strong understanding of coaching. And they were coming to me like after the program, like, I finally get it. Like, I know how to explain it. Like, I know how to provide it and like in the market. And so I think that level of just knowledge, and when we can provide that knowledge to product folks and others who are building out these things, is just so important and helps mitigate some of the concerns that we can anticipate.
Right. And that's an interesting point, that especially for some of these companies, like these coaching companies, whether they're consulting coach companies or technology companies that offer coaching as a service, engaging the entire workforce in that conversation around coaching, giving them training in coaching, getting them certified so that coaching is such a powerful individual journey, but then especially if that's your product, right? Making sure that everyone understands that journey.
Yeah, 100%. And like to your point, it's not that everyone has to go through a coaching program, but if companies can clearly communicate the value of coaching, what it is like, and I think there are different ways to go about doing that. I think that just aligned you for future success.
Totally. And so you've left an amazing career at Headspace. You're starting your own consulting practice. Like, what are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
Yeah, I think single word is just like collaboration. Just getting the opportunity, because this is such a growing field, to collaborate with different people across the field is so exciting. I think there is so much opportunity out there, and I've been fortunate enough very early on in my consulting career to kind of see and experience all of these different synergies and partnerships, which has been really exciting. I think a few examples is like some of the work they're doing over at a company Pillar. They have like a coach hiring network. Like, I've been able to connect some folks over there. I think what they do is great. There's companies like Shimmer that focus on ADHD coaching. And so I think what's really exciting for me is when you're in the startup world, understandably, there's a lot of competition. Everyone is trying to get kind of to the top. And I think that's fair and valid and completely makes sense in competitive markets. And I think what I'm excited to really engage in is like, how can this company support this company? How can we come together to really, more than anything, I think, clearly articulate the value of coaching, clearly articulate what health and wellness coaching is to these different healthcare settings and just the overall population, so that it can be something that 5 years, 10 years down the line, like, it's normal for your doctor to offer you a referral to see a coach for that ongoing continuum of care. And I think, like, yeah, it's really up to us, I think, to work together on making that future kind of vision a reality. So all of those things really excite me. I'll be remiss too to not mention the Coaching and Technology Summit over at NYU, which is really exciting and part of how we even connected, because I think that offers such an opportunity for folks to come together, to brainstorm, to learn from one another, as well as find these incredible partnerships that can occur. So really excited for that, and definitely want to just shout out for anyone interested in that. Like, we're building out this kind of health and wellness coaching side of that summit, and just really exciting to see what's going to occur there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful world, and it's starting to like, the access, I feel like, is really starting to widen, which is always nice to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. So exciting. And just, yeah, the future, I think, is uncertain, but also I'm incredibly optimistic of where we're going.
Wonderful. Well, Neal, thank you so much for taking the time in this busy transition period to share your insights with us. I think it's fascinating, some of the things you've shared. How can people connect with you or follow more of your work?
Yeah. So definitely my website. So going to coaching2consulting.com, 2TO, you'll find, if this is like something that you want to engage in, if your company needs consulting services, if you're just interested in getting to be a part of the NYU conference, definitely reach out, connect. I have a blog on there. LinkedIn, obviously huge advocate for that. I think that's created a ton of partnerships, so you can find me there as well. But don't be a stranger. Like, if anything, I think that I've shared has resonated with you. Again, one of my most exciting things during this time has just been connecting with different people across the field. So definitely want to hear from folks and hear what they're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Neal. And as always, thanks to our audience for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. Take care.